Blake Lively just made her biggest mistake yet. And now the internet's watching her unravel. You won't believe what was hiding in the sealed documents her team fought desperately to keep from the public. Spoiler alert, it backfired. Blake's PR machine demanded a protective order, crying confidentiality, but the judge just ripped the curtain down. And what was revealed? Not the vindication she promised. It was her undoing. This isn't a lawsuit anymore. It's a public trial by truth. And Blake Lively is on the stand, sweating under the spotlight while Ryan Reynolds runs the soundboard from the shadows. Here's the truth. She's been orchestrating a media symphony, planting explosive stories in Page 6 and The Hollywood Reporter about Justin Baldoni's bullying tactics and vicious legal team. But the leaked deposition transcripts just hit, and the receipts tell a completely different story. It's Blake's camp that's manufacturing outrage, gaslighting the public, and treating the judicial system like a press junket. She claimed Baldoni's attorneys ambushed her, hurling cruel and irrelevant personal questions designed to humiliate. But the transcript shows they weren't even deposing her. They were methodically questioning her own hired business manager about financial discrepancies. That's right. She fabricated the entire victim narrative, betting the real records would never see the light of day. But the light is now blinding, and it proves Blake is using mirrors and smoke to distract from a hollow, evidence-free case. No lawsuit, just theater. And the most dangerous part. This appears to be a coordinated op between her and Ryan to publicly eviscerate Justin Baldoni's reputation before a jury can be seated. Let's peel back the curtain on what these leaked pages actually reveal. It gets worse. Blake Lively's legal team just moved for a frivolous sanctions motion against Baldoni's lead counsel. Sounds powerful, right? It's a confession. It's a sign of a case built on sand, now crumbling as the tide of facts rolls in. The motion is a performance, a last-ditch effort to paint Baldoni as the aggressor when the documented words on the page paint a clear picture of calm, precise legal inquiry met with obstructive, theatrical resistance from Lively's side. The core of her lawsuit, a tangled web of profit participation and creative control on the derailed project, A Simple Favor 2, relies on emotional appeal. But in the cold, hard text of a legal transcript, emotion is inadmissible. All that's left are the facts. And the facts, as we're about to dive into, show a witness being asked perfectly legitimate questions about financial projections and contractually obligated approvals, while Lively's lawyers object not on legal grounds, but on the grounds of badgering a witness who is calmly answering. This is the foundation of her scandal. This is where the house of cards begins to fall. We start with the first leaked exchange, from the deposition of Lively's business manager, Aaron C. Baldoni's counsel. A seasoned litigator named Miriam Kostova begins by asking to establish the timeline of profit statements sent to Lively regarding the sequel's development. A standard, foundational question. Immediately, Lively's lead attorney interjects, objection. Vague, ambiguous, and harassing. Can you explain the relevance of this financial minutiae to your client's claims? Kostova, without raising her voice, according to the transcript, states, it goes directly to the material breach of the joint venture agreement, which is the heart of our countercomplaint. The profit participation clauses are interdependent with the creative control clauses your client claims were violated. This is legal chess, not a bar fight. Yet, this is the exact exchange Lively's team characterized as abusive questioning. They framed it as an attack on Blake herself. But Blake wasn't even in the room. This was a professional, asking a professional, about professional documents. The transcript reveals no raised voices, no personal insults, just Lively's team throwing up procedural dust to obscure straightforward questions. Why? What were they so desperate to keep from being answered on the record? The answer lies in the next line of questioning, which they fought tooth and nail to have redacted. They lost. And what it reveals is a staggering contradiction to Blake's public narrative of being sidelined. The contradiction is seismic. Blake Lively has positioned herself publicly as the passionate creative force behind the A Simple Favor franchise, a producer whose vision was steamrolled by a greedy and manipulative co-star turned producer, Justin Baldoni. Her lawsuit paints a picture of a woman pushed out of her own legacy. But the unsealed transcript of her business manager's testimony shatters that portrait completely. When pressed on the timeline, the manager admits under oath that all major creative packages, director choices, writer drafts, budget top sheets, were sent to Lively's production company, B for effort, for review and sign-off months before she filed her lawsuit. Not only were they sent, but her team acknowledged receipt. And for 3 critical months, there was silence. No notes. No objections. No fiery defenses of her creative vision. Just radio silence while Baldoni's company, Wayfarer Studios, moved forward under the assumption that no news was good news. This isn't a story of exclusion. This is a story of abdication. The transcript reveals Kostova's relentless, calm follow-up. So to be clear, the revised shooting script dated April 12th was delivered via secure email to Ms. Lively's designated representative on April 13th. You have the electronic receipt. Did Ms. Lively or anyone at B for Effort provide any substantive feedback on that script before the project's greenlight meeting on July 18th? The answer, after a long pause and an instruction from Lively's lawyer not to answer, was finally compelled by the judge. No. No substantive feedback was provided. This single admission destroys the foundational pillar of her lawsuit. You can't claim you were creatively sidelined if you were given the baton and simply refused to run. The leak to the media narrative was that Baldoni hijacked the sequel, locking her out of the writer's room. The transcript proves she had a front-row seat and didn't bother to show up. So why the lawsuit? Why the dramatic, press-leaked tale of woe? The transcript hints at the real motive: money. The next line of questioning delves into the profit participation statements. Baldoni's lawyer asks about a specific clause, Clause 7.c, known as the passive participant trigger. This clause, buried in the dense legalese of their producing agreement, essentially states that if a producing partner fails to materially engage in key creative or financial decision-making milestones, their back-end profit share can be recalibrated downward. It's a standard clause to prevent a credited producer from being a passive investor. Kostova asks the business manager, "Were you aware that the lack of response to the April 12th script and the subsequent budget constituted a potential triggering event under Clause 7.c of the joint venture agreement?" Lively's lawyer erupts. Objection. Calls for a legal conclusion. But the question hangs in the digital air of the transcript, and its implication is deafening. The lawsuit wasn't launched to protect her art. It was a preemptive strike to protect her wallet. She saw the contractual trigger coming, and rather than engage creatively, she engaged legally, crafting a victim narrative to pressure Baldoni into backing down from enforcing a clause she herself agreed to. This is where the circus truly begins. The transcript exposes the genesis of the entire media blitz. Realizing the cold, hard facts of the contract were against her, Lively's team needed a court of public opinion. The strategy is laid bare in their own obstructive objections. Every time Kostova nears the financial consequences of Lively's non-participation, her lawyers object on grounds of privacy and harassment. They didn't want this math entered into the record. They wanted the story to be about tears, not trigger clauses. About betrayal, not balance sheets. And so, the leaks began. Sources close to Lively feeling bullied. Insiders describing Baldoni as taking over. It was a masterpiece of misdirection. But the transcript doesn't care about unnamed sources. It shows a business manager, under penalty of perjury, quietly dismantling the emotional core of his client's public case with short, factual answers. It reveals a legal team not defending against abusive questioning, but against the exposure of a calculated financial strategy disguised as a feminist stand. Blake Lively isn't fighting for creative integrity in these pages. She's fighting for a percentage point. And Justin Baldoni's team, armed with dates, emails, and a signed contract, is calling her bluff on the record. This is the cold water thrown on the dramatic fire she started. The contradiction is seismic. Blake Lively has positioned herself publicly as the passionate creative force behind the A Simple Favor franchise, a producer whose vision was steamrolled by a greedy and manipulative co-star turned producer, Justin Baldoni. Her lawsuit paints a picture of a woman pushed out of her own legacy. But the unsealed transcript of her business manager's testimony shatters that portrait completely. When pressed on the timeline, the manager admits under oath that all major creative packages, director choices, writer drafts, budget top sheets, were sent to Lively's production company, B for Effort, for review and sign-off months before she filed her lawsuit. Not only were they sent, but her team acknowledged receipt. And for 3 critical months, there was silence. No notes. No objections. No fiery defenses of her creative vision. Just radio silence while Baldoni's company, Wayfarer Studios, moved forward under the assumption that no news was good news. This isn't a story of exclusion. This is a story of abdication. The transcript reveals Kostova's relentless, calm follow-up. So to be clear, the revised shooting script dated April 12th was delivered via secure email to Ms. Lively's designated representative on April 13th. You have the electronic receipt. Did Ms. Lively or anyone at B4Effort provide any substantive feedback on that script before the project's greenlight meeting on July 18th? The answer, after a long pause and an instruction from Lively's lawyer not to answer, was finally compelled by the judge. No. No substantive feedback was provided. This single admission destroys the foundational pillar of her lawsuit. You can't claim you were creatively sidelined if you were given the baton and simply refused to run. The leak to the media narrative was that Baldoni hijacked the sequel, locking her out of the writer's room. The transcript proves she had a front-row seat and didn't bother to show up. So why the lawsuit? Why the dramatic, press-leaked tale of woe? The transcript hints at the real motive: money. The next line of questioning delves into the profit participation statements. Baldoni's lawyer asks about a specific clause, Clause 7.c, known as the passive participant trigger. This clause, buried in the dense legalese of their producing agreement, essentially states that if a producing partner fails to materially engage in key creative or financial decision-making milestones, their back-end profit share can be recalibrated downward. It's a standard clause to prevent a credited producer from being a passive investor. Kostova asks the business manager, "Were you aware that the lack of response to the April 12th script and the subsequent budget constituted a potential triggering event under Clause 7.c of the joint venture agreement?" Lively's lawyer erupts. Objection. Calls for a legal conclusion. But the question hangs in the digital air of the transcript, and its implication is deafening. The lawsuit wasn't launched to protect her art. It was a preemptive strike to protect her wallet. She saw the contractual trigger coming, and rather than engage creatively, she engaged legally, crafting a victim narrative to pressure Baldoni into backing down from enforcing a clause she herself agreed to. This is where the circus truly begins. The transcript exposes the genesis of the entire media blitz. Realizing the cold, hard facts of the contract were against her, Lively's team needed a court of public opinion. The strategy is laid bare in their own obstructive objections. Every time Kostova nears the financial consequences of Lively's non-participation, her lawyers object on grounds of privacy and harassment. They didn't want this math entered into the record. They wanted the story to be about tears, not trigger clauses. About betrayal, not balance sheets. And so, the leaks began. Sources close to Lively feeling bullied. Insiders describing Baldoni as taking over. It was a masterpiece of misdirection. But the transcript doesn't care about unnamed sources. It shows a business manager, under penalty of perjury, quietly dismantling the emotional core of his client's public case with short, factual answers. It reveals a legal team not defending against abusive questioning, but against the exposure of a calculated financial strategy disguised as a feminist stand. Blake Lively isn't fighting for creative integrity in these pages. She's fighting for a percentage point. And Justin Baldoni's team, armed with dates, emails, and a signed contract, is calling her bluff on the record. This is the cold water thrown on the dramatic fire she started. The disintegration accelerates. Now we dive into the most damning section of the leaked transcripts, the part Lively's team fought hardest to redact, the so-called abusive questioning that spawned the viral headlines. Remember the stories? Baldoni's lawyers grill Lively on marriage, motherhood to shame her. Deposition descends into personal attacks. The narrative was crystal clear. A male-led legal team was using sexist tropes to intimidate a working mother and producer. It was the perfect, incendiary spin. But the actual transcript reveals a chilling act of narrative engineering. The questioning wasn't directed at Blake Lively. It was directed, again, at her business manager. And the topic wasn't her family. It was her brand. Baldoni's lawyer, Kostova, was methodically building a timeline of Lively's professional commitments outside of the sequel. She asks about the dates of Lively's promotional tour for her beverage brand, Betty Buzz. She asks about the shooting windows for her other contracted film projects. She asks about the launch schedule for her lifestyle platform, Preside. These are not invasive personal questions. They are brutally relevant business questions.
Why?
Because Baldoni's core defense is that Lively did not fail to participate in a simple favor too, due to exclusion, but due to prioritization, that she was, as the contract states, a passive participant by choice, because her business interests and brand empire demanded her attention elsewhere. Kostova's line of questioning, quoted directly from the transcript, is a masterclass in legal precision. I'd like to mark as Exhibit 12 the publicly published editorial calendar for Preside Media for last year. You'll see the launch of the Domestic Effortlessness series, which required Ms. Lively's direct involvement for photo shoots and edits, is blocked for the same 2-week period in May as the key creative summit for A Simple Favor 2. Can you confirm Ms. Lively attended the Preside shoot in Santa Barbara and not the creative summit in Los Angeles? The objection from Lively's lawyer is instant and furious. Objection. Harassment. This is a blatant attempt to shame a successful woman for having a multifaceted career and to punish her for being a mother and an entrepreneur. But read that objection again. They injected motherhood. They injected shame. The transcript shows Kostova asking a dry, logistical question about scheduling conflicts between two professional commitments. Lively's team is the one reflexively and tellingly framing any inquiry into her other business ventures as an attack on her person. This is the manipulation in real time. They are actively translating business scheduling into personal persecution for the record, hoping that soundbite would leak. And it did. They leaked it. This is the sinister genius of the smear campaign. By preemptively crying sexism and bullying, they poisoned the well. Anyone reading the headline would assume the worst. But anyone reading the transcript sees a lawyer doing her job, establishing facts to support a contractual defense. The transcript reveals no mention of Ryan Reynolds, of her children, of her home life. It talks about Betty Buzz canning schedules and Preside content blocks. The leaked narrative was a translation, a deliberate, malicious mistranslation of boring business legalese into a spicy, gender war headline. And it worked, until now. Now we have the original text. And the original text shows Blake Lively's team not as defenders of a wronged woman, but as architects of a false reality. They took the mundane machinery of litigation, scheduling conflicts, brand priorities, contract triggers, and packaged it as a salacious personal attack.
Why?
Because the truth doesn't garner sympathy. The truth, that a hugely successful celebrity businesswoman made a calculated choice to focus on her own brands over a collaborative film project, is not a lawsuit. It's a business decision. But a business decision that might cost you millions under a contract you signed? That could be spun into a lawsuit if you could paint the enforcement of that contract as a vicious, personal vendetta. The transcripts prove the vendetta isn't coming from Baldoni. It's coming from the Lively Reynolds camp, and it's aimed at the court of public opinion, hoping to pressure Baldoni into a settlement to make the bad headlines stop. Justin Baldoni isn't fighting a legal battle, he's fighting a propaganda war. And with these transcripts, he just captured the enemy's battle plans. The plot thickens into something far more cynical. We've established the false narrative. Now, the leaked transcripts expose the cost of that narrative, the deliberate wasting of the court's time and the weaponization of procedure itself. This brings us to the sanctions motion filed by Lively's team that we mentioned at the outset. In the press, it was framed as a righteous stand against legal bullies. In the transcript, we see its true origin, a theatrical performance designed to create a delay and another negative headline against Baldoni. The motion for sanctions was based on the very questioning we just dissected, Kostova's harassing inquiries about Lively's other business ventures. But the transcript includes the sidebar conversation with the judge, a conversation Lively's team clearly hoped would remain sealed forever. In it, the judge, Judge Harold Moss, grows visibly impatient. After hearing Lively's lawyer's lengthy, impassioned plea for sanctions based on gender-based harassment, Judge Moss interrupts. According to the transcript, he states, "Counsel, I've read the lines in question. You are characterizing questions about a client's competing commercial ventures as harassment. This is a business dispute. The respondent is entitled to explore whether the claimant's attentions were elsewhere as part of their passive participant defense. Your objection is noted and overruled. Your motion for sanctions, based on what I see here, is borderline frivolous. I suggest you focus on the substantive issues of your case." Borderline frivolous. Those 2 words from a federal judge are a career-threatening indictment of a legal strategy. But they weren't meant for the public. They were meant to stay in that room, a private judicial slap on the wrist. Lively's team, however, didn't let them stay private. How do we know? Because within hours of the sidebar, the entertainment news cycle was flooded with stories about Blake Lively's brave legal team taking a stand and filing for sanctions against an out-of-control adversary. The judge's scathing, borderline frivolous assessment was conspicuously absent from every single report. This was no coincidence. This was a coordinated leak of a selectively edited version of events. The transcript reveals the full, ugly truth. The sanctions motion was a stunt. It was a piece of legal theater designed to generate a specific victimhood headline, while hiding the judge's brutal dismissal of its merits. This is the definition of manipulating the judicial process for PR gain. It shows a team that views the courtroom not as a hall of justice, but as a soundstage, and the judge's bench is just another prop to be framed in their favor. And here's where Justin Baldoni fights back. The next pages of the transcript show his lawyer, Kostova, seizing the moment. She doesn't just oppose the sanctions motion, she turns it into a trap. She requests that the judge, given the pattern of misleading public narratives stemming from sealed or mischaracterized proceedings, issue a gag order. Not just any gag order, a mutual gag order that would prevent both sides from talking to the press. The transcript captures the electric tension in the room. Lively's lawyers vehemently oppose a gag order, arguing for transparency and their client's right to defend her public reputation. The hypocrisy is staggering. They demand transparency only for their spun version of events, while fighting to keep the actual transcripts sealed. They claim a right to defend her reputation in the press, but only by using a strategy the judge just labeled borderline frivolous. Baldoni's team's move is a chess masterstroke. They are calling the bluff. If Lively's side truly wants a fair legal process, they should have no problem agreeing to let the facts speak in court, not in page 6. Their fierce resistance to the gag order, documented in the transcript, tells us everything. It tells us the media campaign isn't a side effect of the lawsuit, it is the lawsuit. The actual courtroom is just a backup generator for their real engine of pressure, the court of public opinion. By fighting the gag order, they admit they need the headlines to win. Baldoni, by pushing for it, proves he believes the facts, once uncorrupted by spin, will win for him. This is the turning point in the legal documents. This is where Baldoni stops playing defense and starts dismantling the very stage his opponents built. The dismantling continues with surgical precision. The gag order debate in the transcript reveals a fissure in Lively's legal strategy, but the next section exposes what appears to be its beating, cynical heart, the alleged calculation that this case would never see a trial. Baldoni's lawyer shifts gears and begins questioning Lively's business manager on the financial modeling done prior to filing the lawsuit. This is a bombshell line of inquiry. Kostova asks, prior to the filing of the complaint, did you or any financial analyst working on behalf of Ms. Lively prepare a cost-benefit analysis comparing the projected legal fees of this litigation against the projected financial loss from the recalibration of her back end under Clause 7.c? Objections fly, but the judge, now clearly wary of obstruction, overrules them. The business manager's answer is evasive but telling. Various financial scenarios were considered, as in any business dispute. Kostova pushes. Did one of those scenarios model the potential for a nuisance value settlement? Translation. Did they run the numbers on whether it would be cheaper for Justin Baldoni to just pay her off to avoid the massive legal costs and guaranteed PR nightmare she was orchestrating? The implication hanging over the rest of the deposition is damning. This line of questioning paints the lawsuit not as a quest for justice, but as a calculated financial shakedown disguised as a principled stand. The nuisance value settlement model is a classic tactic in Hollywood. File a sprawling, publicity-heavy lawsuit that will cost the defendant more in legal fees and brand damage than the settlement amount, forcing them to pay to make the problem go away. The transcript suggests Baldoni's team believes this was the plan from the start. Use the media to amplify the pain, drive up Baldoni's costs, and force him to capitulate to save his reputation and his wallet. It explains the relentless press leaks. Every negative headline wasn't just about sympathy, it was about turning up the heat, increasing the settlement price. Blake Lively wasn't suing to get into a courtroom, she was suing to avoid one, by making the path to the courtroom so toxic and expensive that Baldoni would have no choice but to settle on her terms. This is corporate extortion via celebrity tabloids. But the transcript reveals a critical miscalculation. They modeled for a traditional Hollywood player. They did not model for someone who would fight back by weaponizing transparency. Justin Baldoni's countermove, fighting to unseal records, moving for a gag order, and now, as the next questions reveal, preparing to sue for his legal fees, breaks their script. Kostova's questions begin to lay the groundwork for a claim of bad faith litigation, which, if proven, could force Lively not only to lose her case but to pay for Baldoni's entire legal defense. She asks the business manager, "In your experience, is it standard to issue a cease and desist and file a full lawsuit before attempting any direct negotiation or mediation on a contract issue of this nature?" The answer is a mumbled, "It depends." But the record is set. They skipped every step of professional resolution and went straight to nuclear, hoping the fallout would force a surrender. Baldoni's refusal to surrender and his decision to counterattack in the actual legal arena, using facts from transcripts like this one, has thrown their entire financial model into chaos. Now, the cost-benefit analysis is flipping against them. They are no longer driving up his costs. They are accruing catastrophic costs of their own, both financial and reputational. The leaked transcript of this deposition isn't just evidence, it's a ledger, and it shows their balance sheet of lies is about to be called due. The ledger of lies has a co-signer, and the transcript now circles back to the specter we mentioned earlier, Ryan Reynolds. This is where the exposé reaches its most explosive potential. Having established the likely financial shakedown motive, Baldoni's lawyer uses the transcript to formally introduce the concept of a third-party orchestrator. She returns to the line of questioning about maximum effort, Reynolds' company, but this time with a sharper point. She presents the business manager with an internal email chain, dated 1 week before the lawsuit was filed. The email is from a senior VP at Maximum Effort to a member of Lively's business team. The subject line, PR sync for potential project turbulence. The body, as read into the transcript, states, "Per RGR's request, connecting you with our external crisis comms lead, Mark Sutton. He's been briefed on the broad strokes of the ASF2 contractual impasse and is on standby. His expertise is in narrative control during high-stakes negotiations." Let that sink in. 1 week before the lawsuit. Narrative control. High-stakes negotiations. This is not an email about creative collaboration. This is an email about wargaming a public relations campaign surrounding a legal battle that had not even begun. The timeline is fatal to Lively's victim of surprise stance. It proves that the media strategy was not a reaction to brutal depositions or legal bullying. It was a pre-planned, professionally orchestrated operation that was locked and loaded before the first legal document was filed. Ryan Reynolds' company, a PR powerhouse renowned for its guerrilla marketing, was literally on standby to control the narrative. The broad strokes had already been briefed. This email, buried in exhibits and forced into the transcript, is the closest thing we have to smoking gun that proves this was a coordinated attack from its inception. The objections from Lively's team at this point in the transcript are apocalyptic. They scream, attorney-client privilege, spousal privilege, irrelevant and prejudicial. But Kostova coolly argues, and the judge agrees, that the email is not a communication between Lively and her lawyer, nor is it a private marital conversation. It is a business communication between two corporate entities, B for Effort and Maximum Effort, regarding a third party's crisis communications expert. Privilege doesn't apply. Its relevance is undeniable. It goes directly to the intent and good faith behind the litigation. If the lawsuit was a genuine last resort, why was a crisis PR expert being put on standby a week prior? The transcript records a deafening silence after the email is entered. The planned narrative, meticulously built over months, is crumbling in real time within the sterile confines of the deposition room. The turbulence they planned for wasn't a legal process. It was the public fallout from a legal process they themselves were about to trigger. They were preparing the lifeboats before they even set fire to the ship. This revelation recontextualizes everything. The leaks to the media weren't opportunistic. They were tactical deployments from a pre-established playbook. The victim persona wasn't an emotional reaction. It was a crafted character in a campaign overseen by one of Hollywood's most savvy PR machineries. Blake Lively isn't just a plaintiff. She is, according to the picture painted by this email in the transcript, a key player in a joint venture between her legal team and her husband's PR team, with Justin Baldoni as the target. The lawsuit is the legal vehicle. but the real weapon is the narrative. And Baldoni, by forcing this email into the public transcript, has just jammed that weapon. He is fighting back not just with legal arguments, but by exposing the command center of the opposition. He's proving this isn't Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. This is the Reynolds Lively Media and Legal Consortium versus one guy who read his contract. And the consortium's internal memos are now Exhibit A. The final act of the leaked transcript delivers not with a whisper, but with a judicial roar that echoes the very themes we've been exposing. It's the conclusion of the deposition, and Baldoni's lawyer, Kostova, makes a formal statement on the record that serves as a closing argument for the entire exposé. She says, "Let the record reflect that the claimant's strategy is now clear. It is a strategy of litigation by publicity. They have obstructed discovery on financial motives, mischaracterized standard business inquiries as personal harassment, and premeditated a media campaign designed to try this case outside of these walls. Their recent, frivolous sanctions motion is part of that strategy. We will be seeking not only denial of that motion, but fees incurred in opposing it, and we will be expanding our own discovery into the coordination between the claimant's team and Maximum Effort Productions, as it goes directly to the issue of bad faith and the abuse of this judicial process." This is Baldoni's declaration of war on the process itself. He is no longer just defending against claims, he is prosecuting them for how they have chosen to fight. The transcript then captures the ultimate humiliation for Lively's team. The judge, having seen the email about the pre-planned narrative control and endured the obstructive objections, issues a final ruling from the bench on the spot. He grants, in part, Baldoni's request. He denies Lively's sanctions motion outright. He orders the unsealing of the very transcript we are now dissecting. And most critically, he strongly advises Lively's counsel to have their client seriously reconsider her position, warning that continued pursuit of this path could lead to severe judicial consequences, including the awarding of attorney's fees and potential dismissal of key claims. The transcript records the judge's final, weary words. The court's time is for adjudicating facts, not manufacturing them for public consumption. I urge all parties to remember that. Manufacturing them for public consumption. A federal judge has all but accused Blake Lively and her team of fabricating a reality show instead of trying a lawsuit. This is the catastrophic endgame of their strategy. The very machinery they built to pressure Baldoni has now crushed their own credibility in the only forum that actually matters, the court. The leaked transcript ends there, but its message is complete. Justin Baldoni fought back by insisting on light and words on a page. He forced the story out of the nebulous world of sources say, and into the unforgiving realm of the court reporter's transcript. And in that realm, Blake Lively's story didn't just falter, it was annihilated by dates, emails, and its own internal contradictions. The circus, as we called it, is closing. The ringmaster's whip has been taken away. The narrative house of cards has collapsed, leaving only the cold, hard floor of legal fact. Blake Lively's biggest mistake wasn't suing Justin Baldoni. It was believing that the power of her celebrity narrative could overwhelm the power of a documented truth. The internet watched her unravel because Baldoni gave them the one thing she never counted on, the unedited script. And in that script, her character's motivations were laid bare, and the villain of the piece was not who we were told. The credits are rolling on this scandal, and the leaked transcript is the only review that matters.